Welcome to Shine In and Out, the podcast where science meets soul and healing begins within. I'm your host, Sammy Stoltz. I'm a thought leader in integrative wellness, a human optimization coach, a chronic illness survivor, and someone who has walked the path myself of rebuilding from the inside out. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Dr. Brad Montaigne. He has helped thousands of people heal from chronic illnesses that conventional medicine couldn't explain or treat. We talk about the power of intuition in diagnosis, what it really means to heal through trust, and why our medical systems so often miss the mark. But more than that, this is a conversation about faith, depth, and what becomes possible when someone truly sees you. If you're ready to remember what your body already knows, you're in the right place. Let's begin. All right, so we've got Dr. Brad Montaigne here. Dr. Brad, thank you so much for being here. I guess we'll start at the beginning. Your story is part of what makes you so powerful as a healer. So would you mind sharing how this all began for you?
Yeah. I was about 5 years old when I woke up in the middle of the night, gut-wrenching pain, end up in an emergency room. Uh, Doctors have no idea what's going on, why it's going on, what caused it. Just do this, you'll be better. And I don't know how many trips I had into the hospital, but that started my journey with chronic health and the healthcare system. And it's what everybody runs into is they have these dire straight problems. They go to where they think they should go to. They never get any answers, no resolution, no cause, no effect, no why, no how to avoid it, nothing. And you end up having a life of absolute hell. Uh, by the time I was around 7 or 8, we went on a family vacation. Something happened to me. The whole world spun around me from then on. I was extremely athletic, very coordinated child, doing all kinds of stuff, but the world's spinning around me, and I was like a drunken sailor for years.
Wow. Oh,
365 days a year for years. And
can't
if I had a
imagine
day
that.
when everything stood still and my head wasn't spinning, it was like, where'd that come from? I
Unbelievable.
rarely experienced normalcy. I've had major fungal infections throughout my entire body. My tonsils used to look like blue cheese half the year. Uh, I had Lyme disease, all that stuff. And I'm the only one that was able to figure any of that out. And the Lord's given me tools to diagnose things, to figure stuff out. We've shared patients with some of the most prestigious clinics and specialists all around the globe now. We've worked with people all over the world. In every single case for 4 decades, we beat them in diagnostics, care, and resolution of every single case. For a natural doc to be able to honestly say that, that's like impossible.
I'm so glad to hear it. You're the guy they come to when they can't figure it out.
Yeah.
That's a
So,
win for natural medicine for sure.
yeah, and that, all that's just, it's a God thing. He He's the one that brought me into what we do. He shows us what's going on. We're very intuitive. He speaks to us all the time, and he gives us these really creative ways to test those things and find that out. We had a young girl a few years back. She was 5 years old, spent 5.5 days in a research hospital. They're doing scans, tests, everything they can. She's hooked up to two very prestigious, world-renowned clinics, and both those clinics have medical schools. So very, very, very well known. At the end of 5.5 days, I have no idea what's wrong with her. They said to the parents, maybe you should take her rheumatologist. We have no idea what's going on. So a family member was working with us, begged her parents to call us, work with us. They called us. Had them fill out some paperwork, did a consult, did an evaluation. In 2 hours, we knew exactly what was going on, what was causing everything. She had spent 5.5 days in the hospital, laying in bed. She couldn't be touched, couldn't walk, she couldn't move, she couldn't do anything, just cried. The next morning after we saw her, she had some product available out there. She got it from somebody else we were working with. Next morning, she's out of bed. 3 days later, she was outside. And 6 months down the road, she's healthier she's ever been in her life. She's 1,000 miles away. We never saw her face to face.
Wow. That's incredible.
But that's our story. I mean, that's common with what we see time after time after time. I got hundreds of stories like that.
I'm so glad you're able to help people in those situations. I definitely see a lot of cynicism amongst the chronic illness community with just doctors in general, especially Western medicine. So
Hey, it's
that,
no different in alternative medicine. It really is. The amount of diagnostic skills that they teach in doctor schools is atrocious. You've got to go outside of the education that gives you your degree to find out what those things are. And I've got a good 35 years of postgraduate functional medicine education under my belt. And all the people that teach it have no clue as to what I do. I do what they've taught us foundations, but they don't understand physiology. They don't
right.
understand what's going on. Everybody's doing cookbook protocols,
Yeah.
and it doesn't work. It just plain flat doesn't work. It sells a lot of product. All the diagnostic testing, I got asked
Yeah.
to do a on a summit, I got asked to talk about healthcare education. I was blown away. Um, I looked at the educational systems. Chiropractic and medical is almost identical in clinical sciences and all that. The only difference is pharmacology and how they go approach things. But they got the same amount of class time in gynecology, obstetrics, cardiology, all that stuff. Same amount of class time, just a different philosophy in the way they teach it and how they go about doing it. But the homeopaths and the naturopaths, they don't have any of those clinical sciences. Are shocked, absolutely shocked. And I come to find out that Rockefeller invested in the pharmaceutical industry. Him and Carnegie, Rockefeller set up the Chicago University, University of Chicago, and Rockefeller University to change the course of medicine way back in the early 1900s. He hired a couple of shysters by the name of Faulkners, a couple of brothers, who went and looked at 175 medical schools in North America, United States, and Canada. Meanwhile, he's training people in his two universities to use what Louis Pasteur came up. He's a father of the germ theory on, and Louis Pasteur, at the end of his life, he realized he wasted his time. He was studying the wrong thing. He thought germ A caused disease A, germ B caused disease B. And if you could find the germ, kill it, you'd be fine. And that wasn't the case. So he realized that, but it's easy to sell people of those things. So Rockefeller sets these colleges up to teach all these people to change medicine on using lab tests, which are only set up to sell products.
Yeah.
They're not set up to find root cause of issues. They're set to sell products. Whether you're talking natural medicine, it's to sell tinctures and pills, supplements, and whatever else in the medical system is to sell pharmaceuticals. So you cannot find root cause with that system of diagnostics. It does not work.
Yeah, especially if you're doing it all at once, which I'm guilty of, buying all the supplements and trying to start fresh and heal fully. You're right. It's a shot in the dark. So I would love to hear what your protocol is. What does work?
Um, uh, what does work is what a lot of people think is rather insane. And
Of course.
um, because you got to be more thorough than everybody else. You got to understand more than everybody else. You, I, I, I can't feel the fingers on one hand of the amount of docs I've met we're at the tail end of 4 decades of working with people. So I've been around for a while, rubbed a lot of shoulders with a lot of people, and I've been all over the world doing ministry and other things. And with that, we're doing health outreaches and you name it. I've got a lot of hats.
Wonderful.
And
Can't wait to
there's
learn
not a
more.
lot in life I have not done and continue to do. So my plate's generally full with things. The and I tease docs. You get around in clinical discussions, and most docs will start throwing out what their favorite supplement company is, what their protocols are. You look at my shelf of what my supplements are, and people are, what's that? Because I, I'm on the down line of over 300,000 docs where the supplement companies I use, and they're all professional quality supplements. I'm not, I know people from the upper levels of management, vice presidents in some of the supplement companies, through the warehouse, the manufacturing side, quality control side, packaging side, all the way to the reps out there. I'm the only one in all of those systems of over 300,000 docs in multiple companies and all that that can take any supplement and I can rip it apart. I can tell them what's wrong with it, what the toxic uh, by things that they use to create
The
those,
additives.
how to tweak it, what it's used for, and all that. I'm the only one that in any of those fields that I've talked to from upper management all the way down to the sales reps through the whole thing that can figure that out. And that's just it's one of those God things because
Very
I've
valuable.
always wondered, I got this curiosity, how do things work? And I've got a mind to figure that out. My mind flips things around and all that. So we get around in clinical discussions, and everybody else who talks about their favorite company, their favorite protocol. I got to wait till they quit talking before I open my mouth because I start talking about physiology and what sets things up, and nobody even knows what I'm talking about. I'm talking Martian to them. It's not even Greek. It's not even of this world. I was on a podcast a little while ago, and the doc that I was on the podcast with, he goes, it's like once in a lifetime where somebody comes into your presence from like generations ahead of where you're at. And that's what's happening right now. I mean, he was just blown away. He goes, "Do you teach anybody what you do?" And I can, but somebody has to be a really, really deep believer because you couldn't do what I do without a real close relationship with Lord. It's impossible because he's that big a part of who we are, what we do. So you look at how we go about doing this. Mark Hyman's arguably the most famous functional medicine doc in the world. His extensive evaluations of a new patient is 100 different tests. We're 4.5 times that of
Whoa.
everybody that comes in. Doesn't matter what the cause is. I find, we specialize in a different things. Candida leaky gut, because it's the root
Mhm,
cause of almost everything.
mhm.
And Lyme disease, because we just start running into people and people think, oh, you want to put people in a box. No, I've just got the tools to find it. Most of the people we find Lyme, they had no idea they had it.
Wow.
But we find it and we can tell where it is and what strains and how to resolve it. And we resolve it faster than anybody I know in the industry with things like that. So a good friend of mine, he's a number one functional medicine doc in a different part of the country. His metabolic test is 52. I've trained under him, and I've got his test sheets and what he uses for testing and for working with people. And most of his products that we try don't work, which I think is interesting. We've done that with a lot of world famous docs, and what they do just doesn't work.
Hmm.
And we've got the means to test those things. So um, after going through some training with him, I run into him and he goes, "How come you haven't called me?" So why would I need to call you? He says, "Well, everybody that goes through my training is always calling me, asking me questions. So why would I have any questions?" Says, well, everybody does. So you gave me the tools. I've got the background. I got the foundation. I understand physiology better than they do. And I just use the tools. So in a short while, I'm seeing some of, we share some patients and he's missing all kinds of different things. He's just got a
Mm.
really good marketing system of things. And I was told I was one of the top three docs in a different part of the country before we moved over here. Um, and I was in a small town. Everybody else was in really big cities, and they couldn't touch the patients that we deal with. They have no idea what to do with it. So um, his metabolic tests are 52. We're five times that in metabolic functions. You
Which is
have
huge.
to get to that level of minutia to figure out what root cause is. And there's no other way around it. We were continuing ed, functional medicine, continuing ed for a while. And there was like close to 100 docs that got on a Facebook group. They made a group on what's the magic bullet for Lyme disease. And my wife kept trying to get me to join that. And I just kept saying, I don't got time. I don't got time. And it's like 6 months later, she finally convinced me to do it. And I sat down and said, okay. So I wrote a post on their thread and they're just saying stupid things. And I said, okay, this is who I am. Here's a couple of published articles. This is a big part of what we do. This is our resolution rate for all of this. There's there's philosophies you can teach people. There's tools you can give people. And there's understanding of all this that you can train people in so you can understand and get the answers you're looking for. Anybody interested? Out of close to 100 docs, not one raised even a finger. They didn't even acknowledge I put the post up.
Wow.
That's the problem in healthcare. It's not just medical doctors. Everybody is looking for magic bullets rather than what the
Yeah.
problem is.
The big cure-all, the panacea.
And that's the whole reason why we get what we get. And when the Lord was moving us to a different part of the country, people were begging us that we'd worked with for a long time to figure out how to work with them distance, and I didn't have a belief system for it. It's like,
Hmm.
that's just too goofy. It's just I did not have a belief system, but it was made really obvious that he's going to move us. And finally said, okay, I'll start testing this to see how you do this. So we started testing people farther and farther distance. And the end of our testing, we tested people blindly. We didn't know who they were. We didn't know what their history was. We didn't know what they had. We just ran them through at least 200 tests. And I didn't count how many one of those, but a fairly extensive evaluation. It wasn't complete what I do. Was
Mhm.
our testing now is over 450 tests, and I'm always adding more because we always find something else that's another factor, and you got to figure out a way to test that too. So we do all that, and then we bring them in and we test them. And I thought one thing was different. My wife says, "But did you check this?" And I checked that, and I go, "Oh, you're right," and figured that out. The two tests were identical, distant, not even knowing who they were, and bringing back in the office and doing it in person. And it's like, that's statistically impossible.
Hmm.
That's just completely impossible. And I realized then, okay, this is a God thing. He
Wow.
realizes we have so much integrity, he can trust us with tools that very few people have. And he just gives us that level of accuracy. We've been testing somebody in Australia. We're doing a home test for their toxicity issues, and there's
Hmm.
some place, and all of a sudden, I'm testing through a surrogate, and it's like they just hit a wall and they just crash. And you stop. Where are you at? And they're in the kitchen. I go, well, what's around you? And have them turn around with their hand out, and it goes right there. What's that? And he goes, wow, that is this glow in the dark toxic soap that I should have thrown away 5 years ago that's just been sitting on the counter. So get it out of the house. So
Holy
the
cow.
rest of the kitchen was clean after that. And then they're going along and I go, stop. Where are you at? What are you doing? He says, my God, I can't believe this. You guys are the real deal. I'm in the garage. I'm just reaching. I'm about to touch this can of toxic paint when you just stop me. And that's why we get the results we get. We have that level of accuracy and testing, and we test everything. There's nothing we don't test.
I love that. You're immersing yourself in the daily lives of the people as well, which is something you I don't think I've ever seen.
Yeah, people are blown away that docs actually talk to them, but you cannot help people you don't dialogue with. In faith and like you look at miracles and things like that, you got to build people's faith up.
Mhm.
For deliverance and healing, you have to build trust. And you cannot build trust. And that's something that really amazed me. You got uh, through one group, you know, it's like you're looking for some help, but they screwed your ad up. And they actually put a different podcast with the same name of what you have. That's a really big podcast, really popular. And
Oh,
I go through that, and I'm looking at everything, and your email isn't what these people are. It's like, what is this? And I have to go back through a bunch of things to find it. Oh, okay, they mixed it up. They really mixed it up. But looking at your podcast, you have this really open, uncanny ability to just be raw and vulnerable, which
thank you.
that's absolutely vital in
The
working
goal.
with people with chronic illness. Because if you can't be that way, they can't either. Years ago, I got asked to do the wedding of my middle daughter. The groom was in, and she's just a tiny, petite little thing. Her husband, her groom, was an All-American football player. He was a big, strapping guy who did not stop bawling from the moment we stepped out of the dressing room till after the service was over. And I asked him, "So, what did your guy friends think of that?" And they go, "That was really amazing." They came up to me and said, if you can be that open, that vulnerable, we know we can trust you. And that's the reality with people with chronic illness. They have to be able to trust to open up to the level of vulnerability to be able to deal with the things, the root issues, to help them.
Absolutely.
And that was the one thing that was just highlighted in looking at who you are and what you do. It's like, wow, this is somebody who's, you know, you're a beautiful woman, but that is where beauty really comes from. It comes from what's inside, and that reflects out. A lot of people look at the physical side of things, but it's really the heart and the character of someone who makes them very, very attractive. And it's like, wow, this is amazing to see somebody who looks young like what you look like to be that transparent. It's got to be a rare jewel.
I appreciate. I'm so glad you found me in that case. I'm gonna have to check on that. But yeah, it's I talk to so many people and they're waiting until they're 50 or older to come into themselves. And I guess I've done the work myself earlier than most, and I'd like to see more people enjoying their lives from an earlier time and perspective. And of course, like you come from the religious perspective. I come from absolutely, yes, I've had my struggles, but I wouldn't be able to understand the people that I want to help unless I had them. So
Hmm.
I'm sure you feel that way as well. Without your struggles in health, would you have come to where you are today as this incredible practitioner that dives so deep that you can catch things that nobody else has?
Yeah. And it's yeah. My upbringing was the other side of hell. it's nothing like what I live like now. So it's pretty interesting. The Lord got a hold of me when I think I started jumping out of airplanes when I was 19 and had to sober up to, we were going out, closing out down the bars and getting up early in the morning, trying to jump out of airplanes, still drunk from the night before. And it just didn't work. It was not going to work. And I had this revelation that, wow, maybe if I partied afterwards, I'd be able to accomplish this. And that sobering up is a process where Lord got a hold of me, and it changed me into somebody that I've never met anybody like in my whole life. And I've been around a lot of people in ministry and, been traveled all over the world. I've just not run into somebody like what the Lord's made me.
So what did that transition look like from the you that you were to the you that you became?
Uh,
Was it a long period, little things at a
Life is
time?
always a long period, but everything happens from these uh, huge moments of choice. And the choice leads to other choices and things like that. And what you decide to do when those questions arise is what determines and shapes your character and who you are and things along that line. So the the change was pretty dramatic at first because I knew what the other side of hell was like. I
Yeah,
got 30 years of prison history under my belt. In 30 years, every time the inmates would rise up and talk about how bad their upbringings were, and I could get tired of it, I'd open my mouth. It took 30 to 60 seconds to shut up a prison every time for 30 years. My hell was way worse than theirs, and they realized I didn't live there. And that was only point of doing it. And because of my background, I know what the other answers were. And the choices became a lot easier. And then Lars just started showing me things that are impossible. I've seen three or four who were in hospitals where the meter's flatlined, that's clinically dead, get up and walk out. I've seen full quads get up and walk. I've seen thousands of people with chronic debilitating illnesses healed and all that. And that's not me. That's him. And you can't argue with that. You can't explain that away. You can't puff yourself up and go, wow, I'm really something. It's not it. You feel so small
oh
to be used in those powerful ways because he just flows through you. And it's not you. You step aside and you just allow him to flow through you. So once you start making that choice and you start seeing more and more and more go on, it's just easy to follow.
yeah, totally. That's that's so beautiful. When I was preparing for this, I took the last 10 minutes or so to actually say like that I'm your channel. Say what you need to through me. This isn't about me. This is about sharing the message that people need to hear to heal. Um, so I resonate with that very much, as well as, you know, making each next best decision. And I tell my clients, you have to decide what matters to you, your moral basis, and then all you have to do is make each decision in that direction, and you're going to become the person you want to be. So that is also very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting thing when you look at there's a huge drive in people trying to find, the perfect mate, things along that line. In our society, most of that looking is just completely dysfunctional and
Yeah.
is based on just empty things that really don't
Yes.
don't matter at all. And I ran across somebody who said they were on their third marriage and they looked fairly young. And she had made this decision that, okay, if I want to find the perfect somebody, then I need to be the person that they're going to be looking for. And it wasn't a false pretense of I'm going to put on these airs, and
Yeah.
once I get them hooked, oh, hell's going to break loose because they're going to find out I'm really a witch. And it wasn't that at all. She went through that same transition to deal with the inner self, and
Totally.
she became what the person that she married the third time really was looking for and needed. And that is a concept that is really foreign in our country. And that's in relationships, but most people are looking for their health in areas where they could never get it. That people may have degrees, titles, and maybe where everybody looks, but they don't have the tools to find out what root causes are. And everybody's throwing some therapy at symptoms. That's the problem. There's no healing in throwing therapies at symptoms. You have to
I
find out why it's there.
What you're saying with relationships and connecting it to health, that is so powerful, and it's something that I hold to be the exact standard. If you want to be happy in your relationship, you have to be the person that you want to accept. And I even, was talking to my therapist, like, are my standards too high? And she said back to me, Sammy, you're not asking for anything you're not willing to give yourself. And I was like, you're right. Okay. Like that's a natural thing. Um, and I think that you almost have to become the person, and almost, for those people especially, I'm sure you've met, that aren't naturally spiritual or religious, that they have to work to develop that hope and that trust. How do you help people in those situations find that?
It's really, really easy. I was on the beaches of Mexico talking to this high fluting doc, and a couple of things happened down there that were interesting. This was the first one of those two. We're talking on the beach, and he's more of an evangelistic type of event and thinks that the whole world revolves around Jesus. And he's talking about being over in a Muslim country, working with some kind of a sheik over there, and he just gets confronted with things, and he's fears for his life as he runs out of there because it's all about Jesus. And I'm talking to him, and he gets all offended about my approach, and he gets offended, and he kind of walks away, and I come up to him a little while later, and I explain, if you take a kingdom approach to your idea and you bring people to a point of repentance, it's really easy to introduce Jesus. Try and cram Jesus down people's throat, it offends everybody. But you're given the accesses to the kingdom, and it's very gentle, easy way to introduce them because they're already there. Healthcare is very much the same thing in that people are looking for something. You can show them the reality that this is the way to do it. And it's amazing this stupid ways people reason themselves out of things like that.
Totally.
But to show people what the fruit of something is and how you go about getting it, it's it exposes really their heart on how they process all that. And it's like relationships. You can't relate with everybody in the same way. We can accept people without accepting their lifestyle or their habits. And that blows people away who are stuck in the system of that's how you make your relationships is by your belief system and what your habits are, as dysfunctional as all that stuff is. And to interact with those people from a completely different perspective, ignoring what all their traps are and
Yeah.
accepting them as a person really starts to break down those barriers. And it's the same thing with health issues. You have to start to interact with people before they can trust and realize, okay, this is somebody I can work with. So,
I love that. I've been thinking lately that it's impossible for me to not love someone if I took the chance to know them as a human, not by judgments or initial views or my own perceptions on them. And I think that's similar to what you're saying about acceptance. If I don't have to necessarily choose to spend my time with you if I don't agree with what you're doing, but I absolutely in every way will do the work to know you and accept you as a person. And what you said really struck me about the prison ministry, how you can choose to live in hell or you can move to a different place. And I'd love to hear more about what you learned from them and whether getting to know them better kind of unraveled the initial judgments or views that you had on them based on their their charges or whatnot, and how when you shared your story they shifted from your vulnerability to feeling that they could be vulnerable themselves.
um, to me, that was really easy. I used to not be able to talk in front of people at all. I felt like I'm gonna have a heart attack and just explode.
Same.
It was in the middle of Siberia. First time I got in Eastern Europe and Russia was when the Berlin Wall was coming down. We
Wow.
left on day one, landed in Frankfurt day two, went through checkpoint Charlie on day three. First time. A couple of years later, we went in the middle of Siberia, 5 day trip on the Trans-Siberian Railway to get where we were going. Novosibirsk, so it's almost the dead center of Siberia up there. And Lord set me free from all that stuff. And most people don't really they 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 may be around Christianity, but they don't understand how it functions and all that. Jesus says, I do nothing save for what I see my Father in heaven doing. That's true Christianity. So the only way you can really do is climb up the Father's lap and look from his perspective at different people. And looking from his perspective, looking at you, there's a character and there's a spirit in you that's absolutely when you see that, it really draws you in a magnetic way. It's not a sexual way. It's just this magnetic thing of that person is just really pure. And you could just be raw, you could be vulnerable, you can really relate to things like that. And Lord just he opened my eyes to that perspective about the time I went from not being able to speak in front of two people to standing comfortably in front of thousands and connecting one-on-one with people in crowds of up to
That's
thousands.
amazing. That's the goal. I'm the
You know,
same way.
and it was just this thing that was just gone. And how that happened was pretty interesting. So once you come from that perspective, all those traps fall away and you're no longer look at people that way. So, it's just one of those switches. And you quit looking from your own stereotypical judgments to looking through the Father's eyes, to looking at who people really are. And then you speak to their heart rather than their head, and the ability to connect, it just is quick.
Yeah, even just to remind ourselves that we all are experiencing, even though we have entirely different lives, the same emotions. We all feel, sadness and guilt, and we all just want to be happy and be loved. So that's what I've been doing when I go to speak in front of people. I just remind myself they just want to be happy and they want to be loved, and I'm here to help them feel that way. So I I love that. I love that. It's not even a detachment. It's a connection with the individuals instead of fearing the masses.
Right. Yeah. I raised my kids in a farm in the upper
Love that.
Midwest, where raised horses, bred them and trained them, coached them and all that. And I've said for a long time, horse can teach a man how to interact with a woman because they have these subtle languages
Hmm.
that once you understand them and you know how to interact in their subtle languages, you can take a horse that's just berserk and in 30 seconds to 5 minutes max, you can have just relaxed and calm and interacting in this beautiful way because you understand their language. And women are much like that. They have all these unspoken things. They know what they're talking about, but they don't define it. You know, they're always talking in not riddles, but they're they don't directly address the things that are really going on. They talk in these subtle things where they hints about that, and you've got to understand how they work and all of that. And once you figure out how to interact with people, the connection becomes very, very simple and not
Great.
pretentious. You're not playing games. It's not this flirtatious thing. It's not what everybody else plays. You just you ignore all that. I had a good friend done a lot of ministry with. He goes, to watch you with all these women coming at you doing all this stuff, and you never, ever engage or even acknowledge the game that they're trying to play.
Hmm. Interesting. Very interesting.
And it allows a purity to go on because there's
Because they have
nothing
to be straight with you if they want you to hear them.
right. And it's very easy to relax like you are right now. There's not a game being played. This
Yeah.
isn't a setup. This isn't trying to work on some kind of vulnerability. We're just going to have this raw, vulnerable interaction. And you know it's safe because there's nothing behind it.
Yeah. Safety, I think, is one of the criteria, especially with women, that if you want to have a real conversation with them to their heart, not just their head and their scared self, you have to make it a safe space. And you clearly do a great job of doing that. My my point of view on a lot of people of all genders and sexes is they don't they're not able to express what they're feeling because they don't go within because they're scared to be alone with themselves. They're scared to address the issue, so they can't even define it. They just know that they don't feel right. And so I'm trying to teach people that it's not so scary to go within and to listen to what's actually going on because that's how you heal it. You need to see the wound to know what the problem is. You need to run the diagnostic test to know what you're looking for as the root cause. Um, so I think it's as a whole huge, huge.
Hmm. It is. There's a really interesting allegory about that in a wedding, in a marriage, when a couple have not interacted sexually and it comes to the wedding night, there's this wonderfully awkward thing that goes on that there's no experience. of. There's nothing to measure it with. There's no we can have all kinds of expectations, but something unfolds that we don't. Even if someone has been with others, it's new and it's completely something. So you either relax into it and let that flow, or you get uptight and you
Feel
just
the pressure.
rule, destroy the moment. And working with people in health, it's much the same way. You have to set that stage for that kind of a level of vulnerability because you got to get into their everything. to get people who really have chronic illness, because there's a multitude of issues going on. You're a three-part being. We got a physical self, we got a soul, we got a spirit, and those are all aspects that need to be addressed, and they have to be able to relax as you start to go through these different layers of things, and you build more and more trust, and you can get deeper and deeper and deeper, and essentially you're going to end up having to interact with all layers of humanity to bring them through. But you can't just jump in pretentiously saying whatever. I remember years ago, I was doing a bunch of home meetings, and this young guy comes in. He's an apostle wannabe, real pretentious, real arrogant, and some woman that I know starts demonically manifesting in there, and he goes, "Hey, brother," and I'm struggling because I know her clinically, and it's you got these vulnerabilities and these barriers, and the dynamics of what's going on is like just overwhelming when you think about all of it. And this guy goes, "Brother, you want me to deal with this?" And I go, "Oh wow, that's a really easy out. Sure, go ahead." And he locks horns with this woman, and they're both yelling, in different tongues,
Oh,
and you got all these things going on, and they're just locking horns. He's not getting anywhere, and they're both getting exhausted, and it's just a riot. I'm standing behind him, and I'm just bent over, double. I'm laughing so hard my belly hurts because it's absolute total stupidity, and it's completely the wrong way you deal with anything. And after a long time, I would have been 20, 30 minutes, something like that, I finally stepped between them and said, "Would you like to keep free?" "Oh yeah, I would." And we gently start dealing with stuff and deal with that. And she ends up over with this very intuitive woman who starts, she's a cleanup crew who's really helping her deal with some issues in her life. And there's all kinds of things going on, but to completely change the dynamics of what's going on. And that you have to approach people with chronic illness with an extreme gentleness that's not common for males to do, but it's it's imperative. It's one of those, it's not an option. You have to be able to take all your own stuff and throw it to the side and not have preconceived ideas and just be vulnerable, raw and vulnerable to let life happen and not let it scare you. Be stable, and we can't be stable if our whole strength is just me. So, the process becomes simple and easy.
yeah, even if at first, you're doing your part to be vulnerable and they're still closed up, it's not futile. It's keep going to develop that trust because maybe they're tighter closed off because they're more scared, and you can only be more empathetic to that if you realize that that's why they're being closed off or reacting in a way that isn't conducive to a civilized discussion. um, so absolutely, I think anybody could learn from that.
Yeah, you said a key word, empathetic. The empathetic people feel what other people feel. They experience what others experience. They see what others see. And they're the most effective at all this. They're also the best lovers out there because when they're protected, because they're narcissistic magnets, they absolutely are. But
Yes.
but but when they are protected, they can relax into this restful vulnerability because that's who they are. Do you know why God makes people empathetic?
Tell me.
It's because those are the people he makes to be the most intimate with him. He makes them so sensitive that they can hear his heart,
Hmm.
his words, see with his eyes, and interact with the world as he does. He wants to just draw them in close and draw them into his lap, wrap his arms around him, and just snuggle them into health. and protect him from that place so he can share all these intimate, intricate things of the kingdom of heaven. And those are the ones who can really connect with others because that's his world, that's his arena, but he's so stable in knowing who he is. And those who really know him are the same way. They're they're not vulnerable to all these egotistical traps and trails and all of that because their strength isn't in themselves. It's in him who sits on the throne and rules and directs their lives. So it's just a matter of relational interaction.
Wow. I, I've never heard that perspective. And I always, as an empath, considered it to be both a blessing and a curse because I can go about my daily life and realize that I'm super anxious or feeling super down, and then have to realize that it's not my emotion and that I have to, you know, go without, I have to kind of try to, if I can't help the person directly, I have to let go of that because it's not my emotion. And it it helps me so much, like you said, to be in people's shoes and to feel their feelings and to understand what needs to be done to heal. It's so powerful, but at the same time, it's a process for me to learn how to use it properly so that it doesn't take away from my energy. Um, for instance, I have wonderful friends, the most wonderful friends, and a lot of the time when they come to me with an issue or they're crying, I'm over here crying harder because I'm so messed up that they're so sad or that they have something going on and with their family or somebody's in the hospital and I'm just a anxious ball of wax, you know? And I know that in order to be helpful, I should be coming from a place of, Zen and trust and I'm here to help you. Um, so I'm sure you have empathic tendencies as well, given your incredible skill with people and patients, especially those with chronic illness. I would love any tips that you have on creating the proper environment to use use your empathy in only positive ways.
Um, to me, that's really simple. The people think the kingdom of God is for after they die. John the Baptist came in and said it's for today. When you when you understand that truth and you seek that truth and you carry that kingdom with you, it becomes your space. And you
Mm.
invite people into your space, you're not vulnerable. You're protected. And it's not about you, it's him flowing through you. And then you can experience those same emotions, you can feel those same emotions, but you're not taking them on as yourself.
Mm.
You are seeing them from his perspective,
Mm.
and that's how you protect yourself. So there's a process of building hedges, and it's not a bad idea to surround yourself with angels with flaming swords and, push that space out and fill that with the kingdom of God. And then there's all kinds of things you can do to practically do that. But that is the space where you're safe and you're protected and you're not taking it on as yourself, which that's where your vulnerability comes.
Got it. So it's, like many things, a practice where you're reminding yourself when you're having those feelings or those thoughts, reminding yourself where you could be protected, that you could be serving better from a more, higher up perspective rather than your own that has these attachments to these people and hate to see them feel that way. Of course, as a higher power, you would not want anybody to suffer, but you would understand that it's a natural part of life and you would be able to help them move forward. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Somewhat. I'll add this because it's really what the key is. When we start taking it on as ourselves in an overwhelming way, it's because our perspective got off. And there's this thing biblically, Urim and Thummim is casting lots. And there's three stones. One says yes, one says no, and one has no answer. Yes, people always like, because people want the answer that they want. No, that's a hard one to deal with. But the no answer is the one that's the key of life and what we're talking about. The no answer is you need to go back to the last time you had open communion with me because you left me back there. You're
Mm.
off on your own and you're vulnerable. That's why you're overwhelmed. You need to come back to where the last place you experienced my presence and find me there and start over from there.
And how do you recommend for somebody who's perhaps never tuned into that presence? How would you recommend practicing that? Maybe journaling or just sitting silently with oneself?
Yeah, there's as many ways as there are personalities on how to find the Lord. And that's a reality. The simplest, most universal way is music. Um, and to do that with music, it's best to be instrumental with no words. Because when there's words, we get caught up with wanting to join with the words.
Totally.
When it's instrumental, we can just get caught up with the mood of what the music is.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
My middle daughter's husband, he heard what kind of ministry we were doing. He asked when he could get trained in some of that. And I said, well, that's not something we set up. What we do is spontaneous. And the Lord's had me out in the streets for decades doing stuff that doesn't happen inside of congregations at all. And said, well, in the spring we have a college youth retreat every spring. People come out here, and that's more likely when something like that's going to happen. So why don't you come out for that? He came out, my daughter stayed back, and that was a God thing, and it was really interesting. In the middle of that meeting, he calls me out in the foyer of our farmhouse and says, I want to talk to you. And he says, he didn't ask to marry my daughter. He wanted to be my son-in-law. That's pretty huge. But we're in worship on Saturday morning. We start Friday night. We're in worship Saturday morning, and we're doing it individually. So I've put together a couple of different youth worship bands and been in some other ones. And the youth one was really a lot more fun. We had a couple of other people that were actually, yeah, three of the people at that retreat, they've been in that worship band, and one of them, and one of them's my son's best friend, who's really funky personality. He's got all these funky
Love
beats and
that.
all that. And he's over on the set of djembes, and I look at him and I go, Nate, just give us a funky beat. And he's got an egg in one hand. He's doing rim shots on the djembe with an egg, and he's just doing this funky thing. And I am sitting on a guitar, and I start banging out um, just some chord rhythm with
Mhm.
what's going on, and other people are going on. There's three or four intercessors sitting on the couch. They're flipping through their Bibles, and they start doing this in typical singing back and forth. And my son-in-law, he just cries out, and I was like, God, like, you guys just stop. I cannot believe this. He said, I've never experienced this level of the presence of God in my life. And here you are. You guys are doing worship. There's no words. There's no song. There's no direction in anything. And I can't stand it. It's getting so thick in here. I can't handle any more.
Wow.
And we're just getting going, you know. But that is the easiest way to really learn how to get into his presence is that instrumental, antipodal, worshipful hearts. Because the way the people in the youth band, we trained them how to just seek the presence of God, and everybody just followed with that. And it was really creative, and his presence just come fill the place, and miracles happen, and different things like that. It was, it's really fun. That's the easiest way. But
That is simple, and so beautiful. I have definitely music has a lot to do with my mood as well. Like
mhm,
if I'm feeling happy, I can be happier, if I'm feeling like I need to have a day where I'm truly feeling sadness for any reason, it makes it so much deeper. And it's always been powerful myself. I've tried to teach myself some instruments and just you go into one of those flow states that time doesn't exist. And even when I was in choir in high school, it was, a very mismatched group of people, some football players and younger kids, older kids. And really when we were all singing, it's that feeling in your chest. And you leave that room and it doesn't matter if you're friends outside of the choir, but you have a connection with those people and you have that sacred place that you can always go to when
yeah,
you're making music together.
when you start doing that in a worshipful sense, the angelic presence descends, comes down, and it joins in you, and the tones and the quality is completely heavenly. It's not of this world at all, and that's really where things happen.
Wow.
And then that's what you try and seek, and that is your safe place.
And do you need to even know how to play to make this happen?
You don't have to know how to play. You just need to find others who have the right heart that are making the music, because art is an expression of the heart. You can have great musicians that have very evil hearts,
Mm.
and they steal your piece. They steal all kinds of things from you. There's very few that really understand how to bring the kingdom of God.
I'm so in touch with your message and how we can hopefully create a community of more people that are in touch with their higher power. And I wonder, you know, even in politics, in medicine, in daily life, why do you think that this isn't more mainstream? And what do you think that we can do to just kind of spread that light?
Uh, People's number one fear is to speak in front of others. When you
Certainly was
look at
mine.
that and you really understand it, that all become that's all a fruit of insecurities
Hmm.
and false ego issues, all kinds of things along that line. We're shallow people, all of us. Everybody's lazy. You don't see a lot of people who are willing to just roll up their shirt sleeves and go to work with things. Those are the ones that you really need to seek. And those are the ones you can get vulnerable with. You look at a mate, I don't know where you're at in that, but a healthy prospect is someone who gives more than they ask for. And they give to fulfill the one their affection is directed toward, so that their lives are more fulfilled, their lives are more richer, their dreams can be realized. That's more of a priority than their own. I'd never experienced that kind of parenting till I had my own children,
Mm.
and I had no examples when Lord told me to get married, and family's a consequence of that. I'm going through all of everyone I know, my neighborhood, friends, family. My mom was the last of 13. There's a lot of family and
Oh,
looking for an example. There's not one. And I'm just crying out, Lord, what's example to follow? And he tells me, honestly, this simple statement, don't worry about that. I'll teach you myself. And he had me interact in a way with my own children, my own family, that I've never seen anyone else do. Even today, I've not met another who interacted that way. My kids grew up with a manifest presence of God in the house at all times. They'd come down in their footed pajamas at like 2, 3 years old, angelic visitations the night before, and they get, that's what happened last night, and this is what went on in my
wow.
room, and uh, taught them how to get into the presence of God very, very, very young, and that's how they lived, and that's, that was normalcy. It was years later we had a apostolic group of intercessors come up to help us try and break through some spiritual barriers up there, and these apostolic friends of mine, they brought a bunch of younger people with them. I told them when they're getting a certain coming up the freeway, get to a certain point, let me know. We'll start lunch. I'll have some lunch, then we can go to work afterwards. So lunch is almost done. They show up, and these two young people, they go. I had opened up from the kitchen in the living room, so it was just a big 6 foot wide archway that went through. It was really open there. So this small door, and they say, wow, let's go drum up the presence of God. And they step across the threshold in the living room. They both doubled over like they got stuck, slugged in the stomach, or like hit with a football player and almost fell over. And my friends just started laughing and said, you don't know whose house you're in.
Wow.
That's 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 a reality I'd never seen.
That's
And Lord
awesome.
just gave me that heart to seek that, to nurture that, to create that, and to live in that. And I was completely undermined by a narcissistic uh, person that undermined everything in my life. And it's and I didn't have a belief system for that. That was pretty hard reality when that hit the wall. So I've had hard teachers. A lot of hard teachers, and it makes you become very, very unjudgmental.
Hmm. Wow. I wonder because I am a very spiritual person and I'm very also scientific and I love to learn and I love to understand, not just, understand my purpose, the universe, all of those things philosophically and literally, but to understand what's going on in our bodies, the physiology, like you were talking about. And I'm wondering where your happy medium is between the two things and how
To
you
me,
dance through
I
that.
don't have boundaries.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm the same person in all situations. Whether that's in bed with my wife, in front of thousands of people, one on one, working with children, I'm the same person. I've got nothing to hide behind as far as that goes. So to me, it's really easy because the Lord's orchestrated the past of my life to have to deal with all this selfishness that goes on. And I get more fulfillment into pouring than others than seeking my own whatever.
100%.
So, and I did a wedding for a friend's son, somebody I've known for a long time, and one of his uncles came up to me and asked me how many children I have. I said, I have no idea. He goes, wow, that's a pretty wild statement for a minister to say. I said, well, I know how many that are my biological children, but I've been all over the world. The amount of people look to me as a father, as a dad, is there's no way I could count. Lord's had me impact so many people just because he changed my perspective. And at the end of the wedding, he came up to me and he had been observing me, watching me, and he says, I now see what you meant. It's very obvious. It's very clear.
That's so beautiful. And to have that shock at first for him, I'm sure made it sink in even further. That's amazing. Um, when you were talking about, just human nature, we're all lazy, we're all this, we're all that. I think so many people are inside their own heads, calling themselves a terrible person or beating themselves up for having these natural human feelings or inclinations. So, what would you like to say to those people for them to realize that it's perfectly natural and that they're safe to be, and that all they have to do is search for the highest version of themselves and follow that?
You look at how we're created, and most people don't know how we're created, and that story's pretty amazing, but it was it was the Lord himself that came down to earth and he spoke everything into existence. Man, he fashioned out of clay. And when he was done fashioning that, he had to do that with the clay laying down because you can't fashion clay, a statue standing up. It's just gonna melt and fall down. So it has to be laying down. So he's on hands and knees, getting his hands dirty, fashioning man. When it's done, then it's perfect. He leans over and he breathes his spirit into man. Well, it's just a breath of life. It's his spirit, spirit of God. And man wakes up as this living soul, completely empowered with the same power that Jesus had when he walked in the earth. That is our natural state of being. And it's only the people who can interact and relate with him in a proper way where that gets restored back the way that was in creation. The fall stole all that, and that's where it's restored. And from that point, it's no longer about me. It's him enthroned in the heart who directs my life. And if I'm getting disillusioned, it's because I divorced myself from that dynamic. And it's that no answer. You got to go back to the last place where that was going on and fix that.
Hmm.
And the
So
more
when
you
you,
do it, the faster you can pull that off.
yeah, yeah, practice and everything, right? So if you still experienced, you promised yourself you were going to get out of bed early and write or something like that, um, and you're in bed and your first inclination when your alarm goes off is, "Ooh, I really want to snooze that." Where do you, how do you shift your pattern in that type of moment?
If you look at the Gospels in the Bible, almost all the ministry Jesus does is he's going to get alone with the Father, and it gets apprehended with human need, and
Mm.
he ministers to it. That is a kingdom perspective that comes in alignment when our heart is in that place of just being in the Father's presence all the time. It's an overflow. I've had people call me up in the middle of the night and minister friends go, you think that's a blessing? I got people who have no experience of God calling me up with these dynamic, immediate needs. I'm the only one they know to turn to. What do you think that is? It's a God moment. It's not convenient, but it's a God moment. I myself, I push through those.
Yeah, so when they're not feeling that connection themselves, they naturally come to you because even if they can't sense it, they definitely recognize it in you, and they probably seek to get closer to that, to have it in themselves, which they
Yeah.
already do, of course, but to feel it, to be conscious of it.
Yeah. This is a story that's a mind blower. I'm interacting with this guy who'd been a gangbanger, drug dealer, in and out of prison, all kinds of stuff. Supposedly had this God experience in prison. He calls me up one day. His girlfriend's in a coma in the hospital. She's OD'd on something. The family's there. They're going to, in 20 minutes, they're going to pull the plug and charge him with murder. And he has no idea why he's calling me. And he tells me this story. And he's going to hang up. And I go, wait a minute, Jerry. Wait, what? Don't you think we ought to pray? Oh, yeah. Well, what do you mean? Don't you think we should pray about this? Oh, okay, go ahead. So start praying. I hear from him shortly after that. The monitors had flatlined in the hospital. His girlfriend's brain dead. They'd flatlined. She's out, and they're going to pull the plug and charge her with murder. In those 20 minutes, she woke up out of her coma. She sat up. She revived. She was released out of the hospital. I don't remember if it was that night or the next morning. Went home, and all that went away.
Wow.
That's my life. I've got so many moments like that where you're
That it's unequivocal.
so small. It's not about me at all. Just a conduit that he
That's how I
flows
like it.
through. And that's the most unlikely person you would ever expect. God, you go, me. And he not only brings her back, and she wasted her life 6 months later, and I think she OD'd herself again, different dynamic. And the same thing didn't happen. It kept him out of prison, which he claims it wasn't him that got it. And addicts, they get stuff however they're going to get it. And, that's whatever. But the circumstances were that. And it was her house they were staying in. He was going to be on his whole life completely ruined. Or resurrects her. That's that's where I live from. And that's why our resolution rate of the worst chronic illness nightmares out there that have been to all the specialists out there and got no help at all. That's why our resolution is over 90% of those people that have been everywhere back to full health is Lord just he meets us in the process.
Wow. And having all of that evidence for yourself, it probably gets easier every time that when your ego says something's going wrong or it's not going to my preference, it's just letting go and trusting because you know it's going to work out.
Yeah. And essentially if something's gone wrong, okay, what is it? Show us. And he shows us. Like, oh wow, I wouldn't have thought of that. Okay. Not seen that one before. All right. How do we deal with that? Well, check this, check that. Oh, that's not working. What is it? Hmm. Oh, there it is. Well, thanks, Lord. And that's
Wow.
why I couldn't teach what I do to somebody who doesn't know. You got to have that level of intimacy to have what we have. The average doc in any profession can only help, and that's reduce symptoms
Yeah.
to 20 to 25% of the people that come to it, or over 90% resolution of all their failures back to full health. That's not natural. And those are the worst debilitating cases. People can't walk, can't talk, can't get out of bed, can't function, can't think, can't work.
And we're told they'd never heal, right?
So, yeah, that's my world. because I live in
Well,
his.
thank you so much for reaching out to me and for sharing all of this. I guess we're at an hour and 18 minutes, so I'll save your time, but I'd love to just have a blanket statement that you wish everybody knew.
The reality, everything that people look for is one of the fruits of the kingdom of God. It's been misrepresented by pretentiousness and just all kinds of institutional evil
Yes.
for a long period of time. And that's open. That's really open. It's not a reflection of the kingdom of God. The church is not the kingdom of God. Most of the church in the world, America, has kicked the kingdom out. And it's the kingdom where everything is, everything people are looking for. It's the fruits of knowing him and living in that kingdom.
Separately from a predefined institution, having your own relationship.
Mhm. It's always been that way. And when Jesus died, the curtain in the temple split in two. And that signifies there's not a barrier between man and the presence of God. We don't have to go through the system. It's a
Hmm.
personal relationship. And that draws us into fellowship with others of like heart. But that's not always in the institution that people think.
Yeah, agreed. I've often observed people preaching things and then doing the opposite,
Hmm.
or preaching non-judgment but judging people who don't do the same things that they do. So I think it it is most powerful to create your own relationship with your higher power, and yeah, that is great advice. Most people are associate religion with the institutions, so to separate that is to create an entire group of people that now see it differently and can approach it, without that bias.
Hmm.
So, for anyone listening that would like to connect with you, find you, um, hopefully heal with you, where would you send them?
Um, Probably the best place is our landing page on our website is hello.healthfullyyou.com. I've got a ebook on there on simple things you can do to change the epigenetic expression of your life, to change your destiny, change your health. And
Awesome.
that gives every link. That gives a link to our podcast. It gives a link to our website, YouTube page, all that stuff. It gives all the links there. That's the easiest place to get it. So that's
Gotcha. I did.
hello.healthfullyou.com. And that's the letter U, not YOU.
Yes, yes. I'll put it in the description as well. I read your, the free ebook, and even from the beginning, I love the science of epigenetics, and I crave to understand it. And you even talk about how your great grandmother, her state of health while her child was in the womb affects the next three generations, even. It's incredible. So we need to realize the impact that we have on our descendants, on the world, and even on the people that we have cursory interactions with. Thank you so much, Dr. Brad.
All
I
right.
really appreciate you. It was great meeting you, and I'd love to speak again, follow up. I'm sure there's so much more to uncover. Um,
Yeah, reach
yeah.
out. Um, as you can tell, I'm not difficult to interact with at all.
Yes.
and,
Yes, that's
and
how I like it.
you know, these organic conversations, you can just let God direct where they're going to go, and you can really connect and share real life.
Yeah. Unscripted is the best way to do it.
Yeah, it is. So you have an awesome day, and reach
You
out
too.
when you're ready. We can tackle any subject you want.
Awesome. Sounds great. Take care.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Have a great day.
Well, that was Dr. Brad Montaigne, and I hope that this episode has helped you see that healing isn't a destination, it's a return to our natural state, a return to wholeness, to listening and trust. And if today's episode resonated with you, please share it with somebody who needs to know that they're not broken. They're just misunderstood. You can find Dr. Brad's work and free resources at hello.healthfullyu.com. You, the letter, not the word. And all links are also in the show notes. If you're loving this show, please make sure to follow and leave a review. And it means so much to me, and it helps spread the message to people who need it. Until next time, keep shining.